So, how about those NGP games, eh? We begin this series in proper with a shocking twist. We all know that SNK created the Neo Geo Pocket as the portable, handheld counterpart to its Neo Geo arcade hardware line. But in truth, this first game that we're looking at for the system actually owes its existence to the Nintendo Entertainment System. Really, you don't think of Neo Geo and sports together very often. Throughout the arcade platform's history, its one notable sports title was Nazca's Neo Turf Masters, a game so cool that the PGA leaned on SNK to change the title to something without the word Masters in it because they felt threatened by its mere existence. But remember, although SNK owes most of its legacy and existing fanbase to the Neo Geo's enduring line of stylish, character-driven fighting games, the company's history of making great games stretches all the way back to the 1970s. Yosaku, Ikari Warriors, Psycho Soldier, TNK3, the list of pre-Neo arcade hits goes on and on. SNK's pre-Neo Geo output on home consoles tends to see less commemorative love. Admittedly, its home legacy had a lot of ups and downs, or rather downs and ups since they outsourced their early home releases to Micronix, and, well, the less said about those, the better. It was only up from there. Another problem is that many of their console games, like Crystalis and Dexterity, never saw proper follow-ups and quietly faded from history, except perhaps in the hearts of those who loved those games back in the day. There is one significant exception to all of this, though, and that is Baseball Stars for NES. One of the most beloved 8-bit adaptations of the sport ever made, Baseball Stars was SNK's entry into the obligatory Famicom Pro Yakyu wars that raged from 1986 through 89 and left Tokyo retro shops littered with the fallout. Even now, you can't enter a Super Potato franchise without running the risk of accidentally detonating an unexploded Famicom baseball cart from 40 years ago. The original Baseball Stars for NES had broken new ground in gaming by allowing fans to immerse themselves in the team building and pennant chase aspects of the sport more deeply than any console baseball title before it. It incorporated a battery back-to-save feature that recorded your progress throughout a virtual season. That wasn't just your win-loss record, though. Baseball Stars allowed you to build teams, create players, trade between teams, and customize stats. Before that, you could only find that kind of feature on personal computers. Once the Neo Geo platform arrived, of course, SNK wasted no time in bringing the game to that system too. Baseball Stars Professional dropped some of the deeper customization and persistence found in the NES card, probably because arcade operators didn't want nerds sitting around a paid machine fiddling around with menus rather than pumping in more and more coins. Baseball Stars Professional made up for that loss by expanding on the NES game's foundation with far nicer graphics and amped up, high-energy play that made it stand out in arcades. And it's not like it abandoned persistence and stat tracking altogether. Baseball Stars Professional made use of the Neo Geo's memory card feature to approximate the NES game's save features in a manner that better suited the format. Not only could players record their stats in Baseball Stars Professional, they could develop a single team on both MVS arcade units and their own personal AES home consoles. Assuming they were independently wealthy and could afford their own personal AES. Naturally, when it came time to create the Neo Geo's portable sibling, SNK looked to their hits. And that meant a home port of Baseball Stars landed on day one. For the most part, Baseball Stars for NGP plays like any other 8-bit baseball game. A single player can face off against the computer in order to be absolutely annihilated, or link up against another person for better odds through 9 innings of play, and all of the standard rules of the sport apply. Each team takes a turn playing offense, which is to say batting, and defense, which is to say fielding, every inning, switching roles once the defense has secured 3 outs against the batting team through strikeouts, catching fly balls, or tagging runners. The offense attempts to hit pitches, or refrains from swinging and hopes for a walk, in order to make their way around the bases while the defense scrambles for control of the ball. Yada yada yada. American and Japanese players should be familiar with the routine, given the sport's enduring popularity in both of those countries. There was no shortage of portable baseball sims in the world by 1998, of course, so the merits of a new release like this ultimately boiled down to the overall execution and style of the action. Not surprisingly, given the fact that the platform wouldn't be outmatched on a technical level by another portable until Game Boy Advance came along, Baseball Stars shines. A big part of that comes from the fluid visuals that the NGP can render. But even with the hindsight of time, which has rendered the system obsolete and primitive, Baseball Stars still shines thanks to the attention to fine detail that SNK's development team invested into their game. Baseball Stars doesn't simply walk through a checklist of expectations and requirements, it plays like a labor of love created by a team of designers with a passion for both the sport and the medium. Every frame of the action radiates quality and draws in the player. You begin a new file in Baseball Stars by selecting one of 12 different teams, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. Although you may suspect these teams vaguely resemble the patterns and branding of professional American and Japanese teams if you squint hard enough, SNK invented these clubs and players for this release from whole cloth. The lack of a league or players' association's license doesn't diminish the fidelity of the game. On the contrary, it gave the creators a different kind of license, one to give Baseball Stars a personality of its own. And they took full advantage of that opportunity. While the baseball action itself plays out in a grounded fashion that feels true to the real thing, the over-the-top visuals that appear when you manage to pull off a great play, for example, the manga-style scenes of your team's explosive celebratory weeping that accompany a grand slam, are something that you'd never see in an official baseball game. Even within the field, your actions often result in comical animations that give your tiny cartoon men a real sense of pathos. Watch them flail on the ground in despair after striking out, drip with flop sweat after taking a pitch to the helmet, or pump their fist with joy for successfully pulling off a great play. Baseball Stars somehow breathes life into a cast of tiny, generic ball players running around in tiny black and white graphics. Although its gameplay essentially boils down to 4 actions, pitching, batting, fielding, and running, Baseball Stars presents you with a generous array of options and granular details that help prevent those options from growing repetitive. Although Baseball Stars doesn't come close to achieving the complexity of a 21st century baseball game, it does provide you with a lot of options for play. You can compete in either a field or a dome, each of which has its own distinct granular play elements, like distance to the outfield wall. You can also set per-game rules, like the number of innings you play, or turning the designated hitter rule on and off. Baseball Stars gives you team-level customization options at the outset of a game, too. You can select your starter from a pool of pitchers, each of whom possesses multiple unique stats like changeup skills and stamina, which determine how accurately they throw and how quickly they suffer fatigue over the course of the innings. Or you can fully customize your entire starting lineup to field the most strategic team possible, if you like. During the defensive phase, play works exactly as you'd expect, starting on the pitcher's mound. You begin by choosing your pitcher's stance and the velocity and angle of the ball for each throw. If the batter connects, you need to maneuver the fielders around to intercept it. This is never not slightly annoying in any 8-bit game, and the CPU always has a much easier time of placing its fielders exactly where they need to be, but Baseball Stars does provide a bit of automatic assistance to make the process slightly more even-handed for meatbags like us. Also, unlike in many baseball sims, fly balls travel slowly enough that you have time to react effectively, and the scale of the visuals gives you a clear view of the field, a sense of control over the action. It's not perfect since the screen is too small to fit the entire field at once, but in the grand scheme of 8-bit baseball titles, fielding here is only moderately irritating, as opposed to fully hateful. As for the offensive side of play, that really comes down to batting, which in turn comes down to stance and timing. You can move your active player around in the batter's box in order to better position yourself for the pitch, and once the pitcher releases the ball, you need to time your swing in order to connect, or refrain from swinging if the ball looks like it's going to miss the plate. You can adjust the force and emphasis of a swing by tapping the joystick in a different direction as you hit the A button, reaching to strike an outside ball by pressing away from your player, or faking out the infielders with a grounder by tapping down. It's nothing revolutionary, but it captures the essence of the sport without overcomplicating the action, which is precisely what you want from a portable baseball title. Really, the entire theme of the Neo Geo Pocket as a platform came down to learning from others' successes and mistakes and planning accordingly, and Baseball Stars really embodies that ethos. By going slightly deep, but not too deep with its play options, Baseball Stars rises above the portable baseball titles that came before it. It's fast, fluid, intuitive, and a joy to play. The developers harnessed the Pocket hardware's amplified power just right, not by going flashy or over the top, but by infusing the game with a real personality through character animation and other visual embellishments. And it still feels realistic in a sense. Fielders and batters look cute and cartoon-like, yet they all move and act with a real sense of weight and mass. So even though this amounts to a fairly standard take on baseball, its brilliant execution makes it a real standout on classic portable systems of the era. And of course it also presents you with the option to save your stats and your win-loss record for the long term, truly carrying forward the spirit of the original Baseball Stars. Note that there are two Baseball Stars titles for the Neo Geo Pocket platform. This monochromatic game shipped alongside the original Pocket handheld. When SNK shipped the Neo Geo Pocket Color a few months later, several of the monochromatic titles received a glow-up. For Baseball Stars, that glow-up amounted to nothing more than a bit of visual enhancement. 1999's Baseball Stars Color was functionally identical to the monochromatic original outside of the obvious addition of graphical elements to tickle your rods and cones. If you find the color revision, which incidentally is far more common and vastly less expensive on the collector's market than the monochrome, you can comfortably skip the original release. Unless you just have that sickness that makes you look at a platform that only has 9 games, like the monochromatic Neo Geo Pocket, and say, I could own all of those, not realizing that the UK releases will destroy your finances and leave you destitute. But the good news is that the Neo Geo Pocket is a portable system, so you can clutch it to your chest as your sole source of entertainment as you sleep in a fetid puddle of street sludge in a local gutter. Heck, you don't even need access to working electricity, since the NGP runs on a couple of AAA batteries for dozens of hours at a time. Pretty considerate of SNK to think ahead like that, really. My one complaint about Baseball Stars is that neither version, on the Neo Geo Pocket or Color, goes nuts with the customization and team tracking to the level of the NES game from a decade earlier. I guess you could only cram so much quality into a tiny little cart, but if only they had tried. Next time on Game Boy Works Gaiden, the king of portable fighters arrives at last.